Aloha, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting on the 24th of September 2017 to order, our town hall meeting. Aloha to the folks online. I've lit the Christ candle, and so now let's have our opening prayer. And if you'll stand and kind of gather together right after the opening prayer, we'll go into our community song.
Now I'm on. Thank you. The Christ is unmuted. And we are here to be the Christ. We are here to be the divine presence. Not to show up as the personality, although that's awesome too, but to show up as our divine selves. So in that spirit, if you would close your eyes or relax your gaze, get in touch right now with that Christ presence, that divine presence that you are. Feel that radiating throughout this spiral that we have built. A spiral of love, light. We know right now that we speak, act, and live as the presence of God. That is what we are here to do. And for all of this, we give thanks, and so it is. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Stay together. Stay together. Let's sing our community song, Weave. Can you all see over my big afro? Okay. Weave, weave, weave us together. Weave us together in unity and love. Weave, weave, weave us together. Weave us together in unity and love. One more time. Weave, weave, weave us together. Weave us together in unity and love. Weave, weave, weave us together. Weave us together in unity and love. Thank you. Please find your seats. Make yourself comfortable. And while you're finding your seats, I will just tell you before we do the mission and vision statement that one of my favorite things in the whole wide world is chicken wings from Sugar Lump. So that's my name for Bev Ting. So she makes the greatest chicken wings. Yum. So our vision, centered in God, we elevate global consciousness through the realization of oneness. And our mission statement is, together, Unity Church of Hawaii fosters personal transformation, creative relationships, and compassionate sacred service. Thank you. For our president's report, so we're going to have a little bit of eclecticness. Say that right? Eclecticness. I think in it would be appropriate to begin this with something that's very dear to us, things that have been going on. So at this point, I'm going to invite Catherine Burton to come up and say what she has to offer.
Thank you very much for letting me share, and Reverend Tim has allowed me a minute or two, that's difficult for me, to speak about the hurricane and weather patterns. And I wanted to say that at Unity, we believe that the outer is a reflection of the inner, yeah? Outer is the effect, inner is the source. And that oftentimes larger events are a reflection of collective thoughts we hold in mind. We also think of elements as symbolic, that the wind is symbolic of the mind or spirit, and that movement is symbolic of energy or emotion. Hurricanes, if you study them, are an abnormal weather pattern where the wind has started to go in a counterclockwise manner, 666, me, me, me. And it gets bigger and bigger in its collective field. How do we heal that? We heal that by evolving, which is the number 9. We, and Unity knows this well, we are one. So we're being asked in this moment in history, and we know this to be true. I know everyone here knows this, to evolve to that next place in consciousness. The last thing I want to say is that how do we make this shift? Just 3 ways. I'll give you 3 ways. First of all, to recognize, and this is in Isaiah, God governs the weather, but he gives human beings free will. And to realize Christ presides. Christ is the president. So no matter what shows up on the outer, we've all elected to be the Christ, to be part of that government, and to have Christ as our president. The last is, and this is most important, this is with Unity we have to affirm, but we also have to deny and release and renounce. As we release any thoughts of hatred or blaming or pointing the finger out there, thinking someone else is the source and we're at the effect, we're creating those patterns in us, and we're attracting things we don't want to attract, and we know that. So we release that. Come back to the Christ in us, standing in the peace. And if you do stand in the peace of Christ, and that comes through, because the God and the Christ can come through, it will dissipate the air. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And I just wanted to say, too, that if you all, I didn't let anybody know this, but I do have quite a few family via my marriage in Puerto Rico. So I haven't heard from any of them. So if you please, thank you. Now I'd like to call on someone who is near and dear to us as well. This person is going to give us a report on the 80th anniversary. But I also want you to know that this is our newest member of the Unity Church of Hawaii board. That is Joanne Adams. Oh, and while Joanne's walking up, please remember, if you have any questions, please come up to the mic so that the folks who are watching via web stream can see you, know who you are. Also, if you have any problem coming up to the mic, just raise your hand and we'll bring the mic to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you'll probably recognize this. This is the same presentation I made before, but I'll put, the different emphasis on different syllables so that it'll come across as a little bit differently. Makahiki is the season sometime in September through sometime in January or February. It was celebrated as the time of peace and reconciliation so that they could focus on the harvest and celebrate the abundance of the land. And that's what we're adopting here. And we're beginning next Saturday. The first phase of Makihiki is always a cleansing. It's normally a spiritual cleansing that really sounds very much like a saltwater full immersion baptism. But we are going to do it as a season of, as shown on the next slide, of spiritual cleansing. We're going to actually clean the facilities and then have fellowship together. So that's the way we're going to celebrate it. And then we go right into the celebration phase, where Tim will be opening up the Makihiki season the very next day. And that will be the last day that you can buy tickets and the day that we will start distributing tickets. Now, the tickets are designed as an event ticket with the 7 events on it. And the reason I'm speaking at more length to this group is that having served on 2 ministerial search committees, I know there is a loyal core, and you're sitting here in this room. This is the loyal core. When we have the minister, there are lots that show up on Sunday, but it's the loyal core that shows up for every event, every potluck, all the question and answer, the classes, everything. So at the end of this, I want to have, the committee has decided we're going to have what we're calling a loyalty drawing. Those who come to all 7 events will be the only people eligible for that drawing. So it narrows the pool and heightens your chances of winning. And we're also going to make sure that all the names of those who have come to every event are mentioned, because I think we need to honor more and more this loyal core that really sustains this church. Okay, so that's that, and that takes us through the first weekend. Next week is the cleansing, and Tim will give a wonderful speech on, opening up the Makihiki season. The next weekend will be the community picnic, which is under, is she here, Cindy Hensley? No. Cindy Hensley is back from Alaska, and she and Linda Guest put on the picnic last year. It was a huge success. They will put it on again this year. So that will be, we've changed the location. It was down absolutely at the beach part of Kapi'olani. And so many people said the parking is so difficult, trying to park and bring in food and so on. So we have done 2 things. We have moved it to the part of the park just beyond Waikiki School. Yay, thank you for that. And we have rented the Waikiki School parking lot. So that's going to make the whole thing a lot easier. Okay, so I think between those 2, it'll be terrific. Then the next day after the picnic, and this worked out really well, divine order, Ramsey Tom's going to come, which means Tim doesn't have to give the sermon, so he can fully enjoy the picnic and get sunburned beyond belief or whatever he wants to do, Makihiki games, whatever, so that then Ramsey will come and talk, giving, one of his terrific talks on Makihiki. So that's going to happen on the 7th. The following week, don't be afraid that it's Friday the 13th. We're going to have the Waikiki wedding, and we've already printed up lyrics. We're going to sing with Bing, and what I didn't realize is that Waikiki wedding is just the absolute precursor to Elvis's Blue Hawaii. The songs that we associated with Elvis's Blue Hawaii come from this movie. So, if you'd rather identify with the king than Bing, that's fine too. Okay, so the next slide is then we're going on the 28th. This has even been amped up, from what our original vision. Our original vision was a potluck. And thanks to the generous response from you guys, we're able to cater this event. And we're able to bring in a top-notch band for an hour. And we've got a hula halau coming in. So this is all going to be great. Now, let me talk a little bit about Action Auction, because we're still formulating that, but the concept is pretty clear. We will identify projects, and we invite you, if you have other projects or things that you feel, gee, wouldn't it be nice if, and then just make sure that you research it so we know the dollar amount. Don't expect Lisa and Judy to do the additional work, but research what you think you might want to do, like, I don't know, plant gardenias down by the whatever, something like that, and find out how much it will cost. Then we will put that on a ticket, like at a silent auction. Everybody who signs up to pay something toward that, we will take your money. So it's not like the winner takes all. So if Marcia puts in 10 and I put in 10, we both pay 10. It's not like she puts in 10, I put in 15, and I win. No, she puts 10, and I put 10. So I'm hoping that we'll get all the excitement of an auction and really be able to get some income coming into the church. And we're going to have to try and have both some big events and some little things so that everybody can participate. Because one thing I've always noticed when I go to these charity events is they leave a lot of money in people's pockets. You know what I mean? If you're not the winner, you can come loaded with money. But if you're not the winner, you walk away with your money. I would rather we not do that. We could use the money, and I'm the treasurer. I'm just, a segue into it with the treasurer's report. So that's what I'm hoping we will do with the Action Auction, is create the excitement and the enthusiasm about the reality of what it takes to run this church. Okay, and then in the last Sunday, we will really focus on Marie Handley and the founders of the church. We'll figure out the details, but I want us to really honor the people who have devoted themselves in the past. So I'm going to research who is on the board. We're going to ask people, if you were ushers or part of the kitchen or whatever, to stand so we can see how many people over the years were part of making this church happen. And I think we should also, and I'll figure out how to make this happen, I would like to have an in memoriam, maybe a slide in memoriam for the people who have transitioned, who played a significant role in the church. Okay, so the exciting news is my goal has been 80 for the 80th, and we're there already, and we still have a Sunday to go. Okay. Thank you.
Union. That's what it sounds like.
On October 21st, we're going to be celebrating Diwali. Diwali is an Indian festival, comes from Hinduism. It's a celebration of light, and so they'll be included in these festivities. And so we have someone who, and it's not Aloha Sunday, but someone is going to be paying for a meal for all of us that goes along with Diwali. I've talked to people from the Krishna temple who would like to be here to sing. We'll have an interesting day that day. That'll be October 21st, right? A Sunday. Yeah, it'll be during church, and then right afterwards, after the second service, we will have a special Diwali ceremony, and then the meal. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanne. And welcome to the board. Next up, I'd like to call on the committee chair for the Bylaws Committee, which is Thomas Gallagher.
Thank you, guys. What we wanted to do is to spend just a little bit of time. Primarily, this is to be informational. It's not necessarily a discussion time, because as of today, the Bylaws Committee has spent probably between 200 and 300 person hours working on the bylaws that there's some that are passing around for you guys. I want you to remember, and I will probably say this 3 or 4 times, these bylaws are in draft form. It is written across the front of them, it's in draft form. At the bottom of them, it's in draft form. And you will hear me say several times it's in draft form. This will need to go through our attorney before we get to the place that we give it to the board, so that the board can bless it, and then it can come back out to here. But the thing we wanted to make sure that we do is to keep everybody in the congregation informed as to what minds have come up with as we're trying to be able to work on these. We have made it through section 4.04 out of the 9 sections that we've got. And again, we've been working on it since May, and we've had about 10, 11, 12, 13-minute meetings so far, as well as countless hours at night pondering and thinking through things. So thanks to everybody that's on the Bylaws Committee that are there. We've had a number of congregants that have been present at almost every one of, if not every one, of our Bylaws Committee meetings, and thanks to both of there are three of them that are in the audience today that have been very, very helpful with working on that. So thanks to everybody. You guys are wonderful. Okay, so if you look at the next slide, that's the next slide. What I wanted you guys to look at, and it's in the red line that you have, are the changes. Obviously, they're not red, but they are lined, and they're underlined and scratched through. And as you notice, as you look through there, there's a fair number of lines both above and below. But one of the things you will also notice is that as we were going through, it was not real easy to try to figure out how to line through some of the things. And so some of it that is unchanged actually got lined through as we rewrote it below. If you look at section 1, there's very little that is changed in it. In section 2, primarily it talks about official records, and it spends a little bit of time talking about making sure that everybody's got the ability to, with a written request, get any of the records that they need. Okay? In section 3, you will notice that the age limit of 18 for members for individuals to become members of the congregation is removed. We've added the member's commitment and how do you get back on if you've allowed your membership to lapse and it's been longer than 2 years and you haven't done anything. What do you need to do to be able to become a member again? So we rewrote some of that. There's a section in there on voting and on non-voting membership. We got rid of the active and inactive kinds of stuff to make it's all non-voting and voting membership. In section 3.04, it used to be $25,000 that we needed to bring to the congregation if we were going to sell property or anything else. There's nothing property-wise around here, none of the buildings, nothing else that we've got that would sell for $25,000. And so it got moved up to $100,000 to bring it to the congregation. On section 4, which is the next slide, it talks a little bit about the duties that are the senior minister's duties. And what we tried to do with the senior minister's duties was to make them a little bit clearer as to how much of what their job is administrative and how much of it is spiritual, and tried to delineate those a little more clearly. The section that was present for Unity licensed teachers and other staff that are helping with the ministry is better delineated in section 4.02. And we have been working diligently on the duties of the Board of Trustees and what all we're doing from there. We started to do the very same thing with delineating the duties of the Board of Trustees that were spiritual, administrative, and all. It became, how do you divide those up? Because so many of our duties in the board are across both of them, so we didn't do that. So again, this is more informational for you. All of this information will be on the website. Probably, where's Johanna? Probably on Monday, Tuesday, somewhere in that neighborhood. She's going to be putting them on so people can look at them. Feel free to give us feedback. Let us know if there are things that are really hard for you so that we will know where the congregation is. The board member or the committee members have worked very hard and diligently at trying to massage words for each of these areas. And we have really argued over these, the ands, the periods, where the commas and the semicolons and everything else need to go. So a lot of energy, time, and talent has been put into them. But if as you're reading through these, there are areas of consternation, internal conflict, or whatever, let us know what those are. And the website, again, that you can send that to is at bylaws@unityhawaii.org. Sorry? Did I hear I'm sorry, the email. Pardon me. I said the wrong word. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. At the end. So next up is Kathy Whitmire with our treasurer's report. I would like it for it to be that way. Reserve all your questions for the end, and we're going to try that and see how that works. And then if it doesn't work, then we'll go back to the other. What was that? Just to change it up.
Thank you. Thanks for your help, Diana. I did pass out a report early on. If anybody didn't get it, there's a few more copies of it right over here on my chair. And I think everybody's got one. Okay, there's two separate items here, and I want to start on the first one, which is the profit and loss statement for the month of August and for the 8 months ended August. Okay, so we can look over those, and apparently if you have questions on them, you'll need to wait until the end. But the thing that I want to say, in line with what Reverend Tim said in the service today, is that we're looking at these numbers and realizing that we're not covering our ongoing expenses, and we're drawing down what reserves we have, and they're just about all gone, and it's time for us to be realistic. And my role as treasurer is to be the one to let you know, because what I have found is that people want to support this ministry, and they need to know what is needed. And I'm going to tell you right now that what is needed is probably a little bit more money every month. If we could bring in an extra $1,000 a week, we would have plenty to cover all of our costs and to start rebuilding those reserves. So that's why we talked at the board meeting the other night about, okay, there's probably 200 people, almost 200 people who give something every week to this ministry, either in the service, or they send it in the mail, or they pay by credit card on the internet. And if every one of them would add $5 more, then we'd have it all covered and we'd be in great shape. So all of us on the Board of Trustees agreed that we would each add that $5 more and see if we could inspire everyone else to join with us and to make sure that we end the year in the black with a balanced budget and know that we're going forward. Now, I want to just review the numbers with you briefly. August was a very low month. Usually each month we bring in between $35,000 and $40,000 into our general fund. But in August, it was a little under $35,000. So that's our lowest month that we've had since February. So we had kind of a turning point in April when we had the big Easter celebration and the celebration of having our new senior minister, and that was great. We had a wonderful month in April, and in May, that was good. Then the summer's been slow. Now this is September, and now is when we need to pick back up. So the amount of income that we had in August at $34,500 was relatively low. For the 8 months, it's been a little over $300,000, which is about 15% lower than the budget that the board adopted at the beginning of this year. So the board made some decisions at the beginning of the year before we even knew who we were going to select for a minister or where we were going to go, and they budgeted $533,000 to come in this year and to be spent this year. And we have held the expenses a little below that, but the income has been about 15% below at this point. So that's why this is the time for each one of us to think about our tithes and our offerings and how we can help make sure that this financial statement is looking the way we want it to look by the end of the year, meaning that we're covering all of our expenses on an ongoing basis. You can look below the income and see what the expenses are, that the personnel expenses do run about $20,000 per month. And in addition to personnel, we have our independent contractors, the people who are part of our services on Sunday morning, about $5,500 per month. And then we've had some kind of high utility bills, both water and electric, through the summer. I think both of those are going to be trending down, but that you can see the utilities, $7,700 for the month of August, was a little higher than what we usually expect for our utilities. So those are the big items. As you see on this month of August, there's one item that's not a continuing thing, and that's under professional services. We did spend $1,000 on some outside accounting help, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes. So that left us with $6,700 more expense than income in the month of August, and $30,800 for the 8 months. Now, I feel that something like that sounded like a big number to me. So I did a little bit more analysis on it. And I think that Diana has a slide that, at least from my point of view, helped me to understand it a little bit better. There's an awful lot of numbers up there, but you can see what I have done is I broke it down two ways. One, I looked at January through March, which were some fairly tough months for the church as we were going through our process of charting our future direction with a new senior minister. And so I broke down January through March, and you can see that we were losing about $2,500 a month during those 3 months. So we've kind of, that's the basis that we started the year. And then things picked up after that, so that our recurring expenses were $1,400 a month less than the income, but we had some unusual expenses this year. Now, we did have the cost of moving expenses to have a new senior minister join us here in Hawaii, and I am very grateful to Reverend Tim for taking the initiative of getting us a $5,000 grant to offset some of those expenses. So the amount you see, $7,064, is how much we have spent over and above that grant. So that was the what I call a non-recurring expense, because we're not planning to pay any more moving expenses for any other ministers in the near future. So that one won't be recurring. The other item, accounting support. We have spent so far this year $9,000 in trying to get our accounts in shape, because I'm going to tell you, they've been neglected for a lot of years, and this is the year that your board of trustees and your treasurer are committed to get our act together and do what is necessary to make sure that we have current and accurate financial records and understandable financial statements every month, and an outside review every year, because those are our duties as trustees of this church. And so that's what we intend to do. The board, thank you. The board, back at the beginning of the year, did contract with an outside accountant just to work on 2015, the year 2015, because this was at the beginning of 2017. And that work has been done now, and that is what we spent the $9,000 on. I've been working as a volunteer, trying to make sure that 2017 is in order. We still need to maybe get a couple more volunteers. And I do have a really good finance committee and a good volunteer team that's been working with me on these issues. But any of you who want to spend time working on accounting records and finances, do let me know, because we can use some more volunteers to help get 2016 in order and have things ready for our outside review. Let's see, we were not going to have questions now. So basically, what I wanted you to know is that these are the numbers on a bi-month basis for our recurring expenses, and then you can see separately what we spent on the non-recurring expenses, the outside accounting and the moving expenses. So that put it in a little bit better context for me. But again, if we were able to get everybody to put in an extra $5 every week, then that would bring us up about $4,000 a month. And that would really get us in a strong position. And that's not even counting the new members that we're bringing in and new people who come and join our congregation. So I think we're in a position to understand our finances and to make sure that we cover our expenses on an ongoing basis. Now, I want to move from there to my second page of my report, which looks like this. Report from the treasurer, and those of you who are the diligent group that's here every week, every month, you have seen some of this information before, so I will not go over it all again, but you certainly can ask questions when the time is appropriate. What we have found on the Finance Committee is that our accounting systems and practices that have been followed for a number of years at this church have not produced the results we need in terms of reliable and accurate reports every month, and have not allowed us to provide the oversight of the finances that we are obligated to do. And that's because there have been errors generated in the way payrolls were recorded. There has been many months and years go by without bank statements being fully reconciled, and that's been consuming a lot of time recently, is getting those bank statements reconciled. We did hire the outside accountant to do 2015, and now we're trying to finish 2016 and 2017. We found several errors in our credit card receipts, and we're looking at a better way to handle our credit cards so that we can reconcile them to the bank deposits every week as they should be. And just a matter of finding out, oh, well, it didn't get recorded right, and 2 months later we're still looking for the mistake. So that those things have got to change. And finally, one of my big concerns has been with our restricted funds. Restricted donations need to be accounted for separately, and that has not always taken place. So what are we going to do about it? On the back of that page, the Finance Committee has considered the situation and the history that's gone on for a number of years, the fact that we haven't had an outside review in the last 10 years, and has determined that our operation of bookkeeping, which is done on a computer through QuickBooks, needs to be contracted out to a professional firm to handle QuickBooks, to handle the issuance of checks, which is done through QuickBooks, to handle the bank reconciliations and the monthly financial statements. And I'm pretty sure we can get that contracted out for a fairly reasonable price, because there's plenty of nonprofit organizations around town who are already doing that. We will still generate all of the transactions here at the church through staff and volunteers, but the bookkeeping will be done outside, and we'll be able to rely on it being professionally done. We have developed a plan of action, a transition plan, to put this into place by the first of the year, and that's what I expect to happen. The board did give us preliminary approval this week to move forward on this plan, and I have to tell you, having spent 6 months trying to get this in order, I'm really excited to see that we now have a clear plan of action that will bring us to the kind of accountability that we know we all need. We still have 2 other areas that need some additional work. One of them is the preschool that I talked to you about last month, and Reverend Tim talked to you about last month. We still do not have access to the preschool records, and we have made no progress this past month. I am very disappointed to say. I am looking to Reverend Tim, who was gone part of the last month, but now that he's back, I know that he's going to get that problem taken care of, because again, the preschool is a part of this organization. It is not governed by anybody outside. There is no outside board or outside ownership or outside organization. It is us, and it is the biggest part of us. The preschool has almost twice as much revenue as the church does. So we have a big operation there. We are responsible for it. We have liabilities for it, and we need accountability of it. And that is going to happen while I am treasurer, I will guarantee. So the final thing is Legacies of Aloha, which is our endowment fund, and we are all blessed through the generations of people who have contributed to this congregation and this ministry and wanted to make an ongoing difference in perpetuity. And we do at this point have about $440,000, and it is all invested in mutual funds and producing a good income. But we have found that the provisions of Legacies of Aloha as an endowment fund have not always been fully understood or followed and not been clearly accounted for. So that's the other issue that is being worked on right now. The Board of Trustees did appoint a committee which is also chaired by Thomas Gallagher. I'm not sure exactly how he ends up in the middle of all the controversial issues, but Thomas does have a long-term interest in making sure that we have strong accountability for our endowment fund in perpetuity. And the committee has been meeting and working and coming up with new plans and new ideas, which will come back to the board and will require congregational approval at the meeting, at the congregational meeting in March of next year. So that's, we will be getting other preliminary reports from the Legacies of Aloha Committee between now and our meeting next March. So that's what I have, and Ralph says I can't take any questions right now, so maybe there'll be questions later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. So how are you all feeling? Are you feeling prosperous? Yes. Are you feeling blessed? Yes. Is God your source? Yes. What else do we have? So we got Christ in each of us, and I just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you, Thomas. And for that, we'll start with our prayer of thanksgiving. Together, thanks, God, for your substance and abundance. We open our consciousness to continued quantum leaps in prosperity by knowing and accepting large sums of money in our bank accounts and investments right now. We practice the principles of prosperity and tithing to keep the flow of good moving in generous amounts through this ministry. All of our financial obligations are met, paid in full, and on time. We have plenty to use, plenty to circulate, plenty to share, and plenty to spare. We watch with joy and gratitude as the Holy Spirit grows Unity Church of Hawaii beyond our greatest expectations. Thanks, God, and so it is. Okay. Now, before Reverend Tim comes up, after he finishes, then we'll have the Q&A, which is where the Q&A usually is. So this is where it usually is. We haven't been following that, so that's why we're moving back to that, so we can see if we can get through the reports, and then maybe the questions will not take quite as long. So that's why I'm doing it that way. If it doesn't work, I digress, and we'll move back to the other way. Okay. Thank you. Reverend Tim.
All right. It was wonderful to be able to travel to Kansas City for the Unity Worldwide Ministries board meetings. As you know, I'm a Board of Trustees member for our movement, and you get a picture here in the town hall meetings of some of the things that go on in a local congregation. So imagine being on the Board of Trustees overseeing the whole movement, and imagine the different kinds of finances, bylaws, compliance issues, complaints, different things that can come up on a global scale. There's, I think, 7 national Unity schools, different schools around the world. There are Unity people all around our world, and so it's an honor to serve on that board. And as our board met, now, when this board meets, you know, the Unity Worldwide Ministries board, it doesn't just meet for 2 or 3 hours on one night. It typically meets for 4 or 5 days, all day, and then there's typically activities and things in the evening as well. But it was a good time of pulling together, drawing together, working on a lot of things, and it also was meeting during Unity World Day of Prayer. So at Unity Village is World Day of Prayer, and I know we had a wonderful celebration of that here. And I want to thank Reverend Levitt for leading the World Day of Prayer here. Thank you. And Diana. And it was a wonderful time of going deep into prayer kicking off with a Wednesday night service, a Thursday morning service, Thursday evening service. The Board of Trustees led one of the services. Oh, there's the picture. Well, that's what you're pointing at. Okay. So I'm lighting one of the Christ lights here in the middle. And so it was a time of praying together for our entire world. Each one of us was representing a different area of the world, because we know there's only one power and one presence, and that means everybody is included. Then I had the wonderful privilege of going to Wichita, Kansas to see my mom, my brothers, some close friends. All of this was a time of prayer and a time of me going deeper into my Christ presence, going deeper into who I'm here to be. And I've seen various phases in coming here as the minister. The first couple of months, about the first 2.5 months, I felt like was a time of just getting to know what is the culture here, what is the milieu, how do things operate here, how do things happen. I wasn't coming in to say, okay, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it, before I knew what the culture was. So the first 2.5 months I felt like was understanding the culture. The second 2.5 months was getting my wife here, getting our belongings here, organizing that stuff, and then beginning to get more clarity about vision and mission and what I see us doing here. And of course, a lot of that has to do with growing not only numerically, but growing in terms of our transformation, growing deeper into our spiritual practice. And it is my vision, and I know it will happen, is that all of us will go deeper and deeper spiritually. We're not just going to stay at the level we're at. Some of you know that I used to be an assistant to a priest in the Catholic Church, and I would work with a lot of Catholic people, and some of them had never moved very far beyond their 2nd grade catechism. What I affirm for here is that we will continue to grow, and we will have SEE classes so that all of us can grow. Whether or not you intend to be a licensed Unity teacher or a minister, classes and workshops that will help us to go deeper and to understand and be able to live this Christ presence based on the spiritual principles that our movement is founded on and teaches. We have a rich, rich history and a rich, rich body of teachings and literature. So when these classes come up, I encourage you all to be a part of that. I continue to envision our youth group expanding and growing. And we continue to receive, on occasion, some checks from a grant, from a foundation that is given towards youth and our work with youth. And I am envisioning that is already here. You know, one of the things I learned from Ernest Holmes, studying Ernest Holmes and Science of Mind, is that we're not trying to create something, we're going to see what's already here. We're going to manifest what's already here. It's already here. So I see the youth continuing to grow. Now, one of the things that I shared with the board, I wanted to share this with you. And this goes into the next phase. Okay, so I talked about the 2.5 months, then the next 2.5 months. Okay, I've been here more than 5 months. And the phase that I now feel myself going into is really being at home here and really working with people to see these dreams and this vision coming about that all of us are doing together as a community-based church, as a mission-based church, focused on our mission. I wondered what it would be like before I came here to Unity Church of Hawaii. I wondered what it would be like to live in Hawaii. And I wondered what it would be like if I was so fortunate to be where I truly felt called to be in Hawaii, what my feelings would be about Wichita, Kansas, and where I came from. So on my trip back to Wichita, I so missed those people, and I so loved them. And it was such a great time. And I was so surprised that just in 2 or 3 days, I was missing Unity Church of Hawaii. And I was missing Hawaii. I was missing each and every one of you. And I knew in my heart that this is home. So it was different. It's like, the leaves were starting to turn colors, and the nights become cool, and these wonderful people. And I still love all that. But I absolutely know in my heart that I'm in my right and perfect place, and that you are too, and that we are building this loving ohana together. And if once in a while you see some waves and some turbulence, don't jump ship. Stay on board. Stick with it, because I know that this church has the greatest days ahead of it. Abundance, growth, prosperity, and bringing forth the highest and best. Thank you for this honor. God bless you.
Thank you, Reverend Tim. So now I'd like to open up the floor to questions for Thomas concerning bylaws.
You want me to go up there? Or? No, that's fine. Right here? Okay. Hi, Thomas. I got a question for you.
Who else do we have on? He's asking for the whole bylaws.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Is there anybody else on the bylaws that I'm missing?
Is the whole committee going to answer?
Okay. Bylaws.
You ready? Thomas, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. It's a pretty easy question, I hope. From a developmental perspective, I was making an assumption that you would have an age requirement for membership of a church, because I see a 6-year-old human different than their mental capacity to make a decision, different than a 16-year-old, different than a 21-year-old, different than a 30-year-old. So I would like to hear a little bit about why you decided to remove the age requirement of 18-year-olds, and what are you going to replace it with? Because I'm assuming children aren't going to just have free reign to just say they want to be a member. So if you could kind of speak to that philosophically, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Reverend Tim was involved very strongly in that, and so I'll let him answer that.
I wanted to share a little bit about my experience with that. And again, these are recommendations. This hasn't been approved. I do not believe in ageism. I believe in inclusivity. And so I believe very strongly that maturity is not based on the number of times that we've circled the sun, but it's based on our spiritual maturity. And I've learned a lot from children over the years. I first became a member of a church when I was 7 years old. And as a member of that church, I could vote. And I took that very seriously. And going through the membership process, it was obvious to me that becoming a member was a very serious responsibility. So that was part of my spiritual formation. In the previous church where I was at, Unity of Wichita, they had initially, I don't know that it wasn't a bylaw, but they had a policy that there couldn't be any members under a certain age. And I brought that into question. I just wanted a good explanation for it. Again, I'm open, and I think we're all open to various ways of looking at it. But I believe that regardless of one's age, if they're serious enough to go through the classes, if they're serious enough to do the homework, if they're serious enough to come to an annual meeting and sit through the reports, I think that they may be serious enough to also have the right to vote. And so that is my particular perspective. Again, I've seen people of all different numbers behind their name with varying amounts of spiritual maturity. I don't think that, and you had a second part to your question, which was, would we set a particular age limit? I personally am not in favor of an age limit. I'd rather take it on a case-by-case basis for those who are ready. But again, we're open, and other members of this committee may have different thoughts, but that's part of what this all came from.
Thomas, could you explain to everyone who has the final say? Please.
Well, I think everybody knows what will happen with the bylaws committee is when we are finished with working through those, they'll go through the attorney. The attorney will look at it to make sure that we are not out of compliance with Hawaii state law or there are no other conflicts that are present. They will come back then to the board for board to look at it, approve it. Then it will come to the congregation for the congregation to approve. That's where it will go. Is that what you were asking?
Yes. I just
That the
wanted
congregation will...
These are your bylaws. That's why we have worked extremely hard at making sure that your voice is heard at every one of our meetings. We try to make sure we listen. We've tried to incorporate. It's difficult to incorporate I want this and I don't want the very same thing because the two are very difficult when there's a yes and a no to make them marry. But we've tried extremely hard and hope that you guys can be happy with where we come to.
Are you going to have us then vote on this package up and down, or will they be taken section by section? And how will that work with the congregation?
I'm not positive that we know for sure. That would obviously be the desire, at least for me, and I can speak for myself, for people to be able to ratify them as a group and be able to make a decision. I think the way to be able to do that is to have people seriously look at the bylaws that are written and let us know through the website that we've got where it is that people are so that we can try to make it to where it's an easy process. I can tell you in the past what we tried to do is come to the meeting and say, these are what we've come up with, yes or no, and people hadn't had months to contemplate, think through, and that's what we're trying not to have happen this time.
Okay, I just would like to present a different opinion on the age issue just so that we have two viewpoints for people to mull over. I think 18 is chosen for a specific reason, and that's because legally that's the age of majority. People under that age can emancipate if they marry, but otherwise they are considered quite literally the property of their parents. And I think that's what would concern me, is if we have a family comes in and the family is very clearly controlled by the parents and we're not having independent thinking. So I think, and many of you may not know, but if a child under 18, for example, buys a car or buys, better yet, buys a green headband and then decides later they don't want to buy the green headband, the vendor's stuck because a minor can void a contract except for a necessity. So there's real distinct differences between the legal responsibilities of parents and children and specific ways that you graduate from being a child to being an adult. So I think that section is going to need quite a bit of discussion. And I feel that way about other sections, but I know we don't really want to get into haggling over that. That will come later, and I hope you're going to provide plenty of time for there to be discussion, not just let's email back and forth, because that's not really a discussion.
Thank you.
In the back also.
Okay. I just need clarification. Under section, the senior minister,
4.02.
right. Under 5, section 5, licensed unity ministers and licensed unity teachers. It says, and it's crossed out, that serve as a voting, this is B, serve as a voting member of the Board of Trustees on all matters except his or her own employment and that of successor. Now, is that related to the licensed unity ministers and the unity teachers, or the senior minister?
The senior minister.
It is. So why is that taken out? Why is that particular?
What you may notice on, that's what I was talking about on some of these as we were going through them, it was easier to just eliminate a section and then retype it.
Oh,
And so
okay.
if you look at them, a lot of those are ones that got written verbatim or very close to verbatim. Like that one, I believe, if it says on that one UWM instead of Unity Worldwide Ministries, or maybe it was on one of the other with regards to the senior minister. But a good percentage of those are the same thing. It was
Okay.
just,
It's okay.
it was cleaned up.
Redundant. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you so much.
I just want to make a comment on my thoughts on the youth as members. Possibly, I would say age-wise with the voting, I would have some concern whether, they are led by parents, but as members, the kids are really bright, and there are a lot of kids who are so spiritually connected, and denying them membership to me would really go against, to me, a whole spirituality or whatever you guys want to call it. I do think that there are many youth that deserve and should be members and allowed to become members if they choose. The voting, honestly, I think there are a lot of kids who are really bright enough. I work with kids. My whole life has been kids. Even when I was a kid, I worked with kids. And there are many, many bright kids. But there is the influence that I would have the concern. But there are a lot of kids who are smart enough. And that's just my input, because I'm not sure I'm going to be able to email you. So there you go.
Thank you very much. Now, one of the things that came out of that too is that remember that children at the age of 3, 4, 5 that want to become a member have to come through the classes. And in the process of the classes, the person that is running the classes, senior minister, is going to be looking at the maturity of the individuals that are there. And as she looks at, are these people ready to become members, that should be in the wisdom of the person that's trying to help us to help discern that. It may not work all the time, but hopefully it will help.
Yeah, my response to that is similar to Thomas's, but thank you so much for that expression. As we all know from being familiar with the Bible, Jesus walked into the temple. What age was that he
12.
first walked into there? 12. So it happens. And there are checks and balances, like Thomas was just indicating, and there is a process. And those are membership classes, and there is discernment on the part of the minister. It's not any 12-year-old or any whatever age gets in. There is discernment there. But for that reason, that some have that ability, and some who are older may not even have that ability of that 12-year-old.
But thank you again, everybody, for your comments, your thoughts, and your processes. Those are things we need to hear from you about if there are real issues.
Hey, Reverend Tim, I want to thank you, all of you, for taking the time to share your perspective. But just my own religious background, and just from age of consent, from a standpoint that parents really have the final say over children's decisions. I would be more comfortable having an age cutoff, but that's just me. I'm only one grain of sand on this big beach, and so having said that, and it doesn't mean that I don't think some children are smart, but I think a young child can be smart, but I do not think a young child can have the same wisdom as somebody that's older. I think it takes a lot of time and experience to gather wisdom. So, but moving forward, in terms of voting on the bylaws, I honestly, from a process standpoint, I don't think we're going to be able to, I mean that respectfully to all of us, to vote up and down, as you use that word, up and down, is that the word? I think we're going to have to take it section by section. I can't envision that we're all going to just show up here and vote yes or no on an up and down document. So I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate what you're saying. As a matter of fact, I sent in some bylaws. I sent you an email today with some bylaws feedback. But you know how people are. Sometimes people wait till the last minute. So I think we're going to have to allow for a pretty thorough process when we do vote on it, to go line by line and section by section. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky. And if I may respond just real quickly, because this is a working document and a working process, you know, I mean, there's other options. For example, a child might become a non-voting member. And so, I mean, there's other options, you know, but just a thought. I think Kathy has.
Well, my thoughts are on something else entirely.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I'm
I mean,
sorry.
they're on the
I thought
the
you had the
bylaws,
mic.
but not on the issue of age, although that seemed like an exciting issue. Were you going to respond?
Yes, to the previous concern. We did have an initial discussion with the bylaws committee as to how are we going to do this. And we don't actually know exactly yet. And we'll probably have a better idea when we finish the whole process. There may be a possibility of a blended type of a vote, which may be line item rollouts for some simple items. But the bylaws is like a chess match. You move one piece, and it affects many other areas in the bylaws. Those would probably have to be a rollout, standalone rollout, in my opinion. But again, we're getting into this. Now, the really important thing, I think, is to have the information out there, and out there in a lot of time in advance, so that people can actually review it, get their questions answered, understand it, provide the feedback. These are just suggestions. So what would really make this church rock is that everybody really be on it, get involved in it, give the feedback. These are our bylaws. It's not the board's, it's not the bylaws committee's bylaws, it's our bylaws. And there was a suggestion, I think it was also discussed at the last board meeting, that we may be putting out our drafts, which are changing weekly, and post it on the website. I wanted to take a look. I looked this morning and I didn't see it.
Yeah, we haven't.
But
I haven't talked to Johanna
I know
about that
I know
or
things are
anything.
going pretty fast here, but so that was just the question. Is there a progress and an intention to complete that?
You're still okay with that, Johanna? Right. So what I think we'll do with these is the 9 pages that we currently have would go on as they are, as PDFs probably, so that people can't change them or anything else in the process. Not that they would, but just so that we can do them that way. And then in a week, we'll give you the ones where we are, and a week after that. And so every week, everybody keep on the website to see them come up.
Okay, I had 2 questions, and you've partially answered the first one, which was just to get clarity on the committee's vision of how to bring this forward to the congregation. I personally think it'd be a big mistake to just put one up or down vote on the whole thing, because there's a lot of different topics here that have a significant impact, and if somehow we can divide it into the topics and say, okay, here's the topic with regard to who can be a member, and here's the topic with regard to the duties of the board, and here's the topic with regard to the duties of the senior minister, and vote up or down on each one of those sections. It might be more likely to get something passed, because I see a lot of controversial stuff here, and we're just now beginning to find out what's controversial. I think the other issue that the committee and the board have to resolve in the near future is whether indeed it is up or down on each piece, or whether someone can make a motion to amend it. My personal view is that by the time we've gone through this months-long process and publicized it, last-minute amendments would probably be a mistake. But that's an issue that I think has to be resolved sometime soon. And now I have one substantive issue I want to raise. I did go to a lot of the meetings, and will continue, but I must have missed out on the early stages when Section 2.02 regarding official records got rewritten to make it even more wide open about what records can be withheld from the congregation. And there's no definition in here as to what that is, and that's got to be defined, and I don't understand why it's not here or where it's going to be put and when, because the very idea that an unknown number or nature of so-called confidential documents can be withheld from the congregation is the exact opposite of transparency. So I'm wondering why the committee has left it in this way.
Okay, we did discuss that, and we are finding the need for definitions in our bylaws. So that would be one of the items that's earmarked for a definition. And I agree with you, that should be very clear. So we could either laundry list it all inside that paragraph, or we could put it in an index or create definitions. I think that's where the committee left off with it.
I just want to encourage everyone to please read through this red line document, and to understand this is just the draft. So, this is the first time bringing it to you, and they're going to go back and look at it and look at your suggestions. So it's not falling on deaf ears. And if you want to attend the meetings, you're able to do so. If you're able to do so, you can do that as well.
We love participation.
It's a good time.
Anybody, everybody can come, and it's great. It's lots of fun.
Okay, are there any other questions? Bylaws. Hearing, going once, going twice, going thrice. Okay, no other questions on the bylaws. Thank you, Thomas and the Bylaws Committee. Now, any questions for Kathy Whitmire and the Finance? Do you want to bring the Finance Committee up? The Finance Committee wants to come up and join Kathy. I'm opening the floor now to finance questions. I'm going to bring the mic around the way we did before. When I bring the mic to you, please stand up, just because if the committee's up there, then it'd be kind of crowded up there.
Kathy, looking back historically, going back before 2015, are the summer months typically low-income months?
That is my understanding, that the summer months have been low in the past. Linda, do you have any other information on that?
Go ahead and come to the microphone. Yeah, please.
Well, I remember Reverend Sky mentioning that, during his term. But I believe with Reverend Jack, with all the fundraising we were doing, we weren't noticing that.
Okay, thanks.
I wanted to thank the committee, and especially Kathy, for uncovering our financial position in truth. There's been a lot of people that have been trying to uncover, see what our financial position is in the past, and there's been a lot of covering up, so we couldn't get to it. But I would like to, what I really want to do is see that, at least I think that we're going the right way now, and I really would be remiss to see anybody turn around and go back to how we were. I understand how Reverend Sky, that things got messed up during his when he was here, but I knew him, so I understand what happened. But to get everything straightened all back around, we're on the way, and I'd really hate to see us turn back around and fall back in the deficit, into the wrong way and keep going the way we're going now, because we're starting to finally get things straightened around. And it took a great deal of sacrifice and a lot of things to get everything turned around. So there was also, I would really like to be able to ask questions when we could feel like asking questions, because I feel like I'm being told no, and I feel stifled. The average age of people in Unity is around 60-something, and I tend to forget what I wanted to ask, and it's a well-known ploy of the city to have questions at the end because you run out of time and you forget what you're going to ask. And I'd like to have the open discussion that we have been having at the town hall meetings. So that's how I feel about things. Thank you.
I'd just like to interject one moment here to say that, and this is kind of in what Linda was saying, we are moving forward. And the only way we can move forward is not to try to live in the past. So if we can put that ahead and stop talking about the past, and let's move on. Okay?
Yeah, I have a question about the transformation of our accounting systems and the existing employees that we have. The existing employees that we have on staff. If we are planning to contract out that job, I wanted to know what was going to happen with regards to those employees that are already on staff.
The employees that are on staff are the responsibility of the senior minister, and I'm going to let him address that issue.
While Thomas and Kathy have met with me privately, they shared with me the proposal that the Finance Committee had been considering. I don't know if I was involved in putting together all of that proposal, but what I know that our bylaws allow for is for the church board to, at its discretion, be able to provide even an outside accountant or whatever to be hired. And that's, besides the senior minister, those are the two things I see in the bylaws where the board looks like they can directly hire. Elsewhere in the bylaws, it says that the minister, as the chief executive officer, or whatever you want to call them, oversees the employees, hiring and terminating. So I see a little bit of contradiction myself in the bylaws as they currently stand. But what I recognize is that our Finance Committee is wanting to do due diligence in making sure that we provide what the bylaws call us to provide, which is accurate, timely, financial accounting. And in regards to people who are already employed, as Kathy has referenced, that would come under my oversight. So I think this is something that's still being worked through, and as I understand the board vote that we had this last Thursday night, it was to gather information and research so that a further proposal could come to the board, but the board hasn't stated this is the direction we're going to go, but rather that we're investigating and researching it. That's my understanding of it.
Yeah, that was my understanding as well.
Oh, we need a microphone. Because people are online. They cannot hear. Okay.
Yeah, that was my understanding during the board meeting, that we were doing investigations. But in listening to the report today, I felt that the information wasn't quite what I had heard at the board meeting, and I wanted clarity on that. Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Okay, I'd like to give a little bit more clarity. The issue that I was discussing and Reverend Tim was discussing has to do with people who are on the staff, people who are employees, legal employees of the church. And what the Finance Committee proposed to the board has nothing to do with employees of the church. It has to do with contracting out for a service. And as Reverend Tim pointed out, that is clearly the authority of the board to make that decision. So the next item that will come back to the board as a result of our preliminary vote on Thursday is a proposal for a specific contract, to contract out specific services to a specific firm for a specific amount of compensation to that firm. So it doesn't really have to do with employees. So we don't plan to bring forward any proposals with regard to employees from the Finance Committee.
Just as a quick comment, one of the issues that we've had has been that the amount of employee time that is present within Unity Church of Hawaii employees was not sufficient to be able to get the data that we needed. And so what we're needing to do is get that additional data, because we are years behind in being able to get it. And so what we're trying to do is make up for a lot of past time to be able to get our books up to order, and to be able to have, at somewhat of a drop of a hat, an agency to say, give us where we are, and it's all in a system that they can get that to us immediately, so that we know where we are and what's happening.
Hi there. I have two topics I wanted to ask about. Let's see. In the past, I know you have spoken about, we have had monies that go towards a company, that we have a connection or an agreement so that people can come in and have their wedding ceremonies here, correct? When I look at income item 4600 ceremonies, does that just mean that there were no ceremonies for the month of August?
The income item you were looking at had what number on it?
4600.
4700. 4600. Yeah, 4600 does mean there were no ceremonies in August.
And how does that 4600 differ from 4700, the outreach weddings UI?
So 4700 is an ongoing contract that we have with a group in town that organizes weddings for people who come from Japan to have their weddings here. And they do weddings from time to time throughout the year, but they pay us on a semi-monthly basis for the services that we provide to them.
Okay, so 6152 in the expenses. That would be the $150 that we pay.
I'm sorry, which number were you
6152. The $150 is towards those services, the UI services?
No, the ceremony contract labor, maybe Reverend Tim can correct me if I'm wrong, but that usually pertains to someone who is using this facility to hold either a celebration of life or a wedding ceremony or a renewal of vows, and someone handling the audiovisual or doing some other service is paid in association with that program. That's not usually the UI Japanese group, as far as I know.
So an expense that we put out, even though they're using our facilities?
It's an expense that we pay as part of the expenses associated with those revenue streams, yes. You want to talk more about that?
I don't know specifically. I would have to have a little more time to see exactly what that $150 is, and I'm trying to run it back through my mind. But like if Reverend Levitt or I or someone else were to, let's say, do some sort of ceremony, and typically when we do it, a lot of times it is connected with the church community, but $150 might be the amount we might get paid for a wedding or for a funeral or something like that. But I don't know in this exact instance. Judy knows. Judy knows what's going on.
I can answer.
Do you want to ask me, or do you want to ask somebody who knows?
If it's a wedding, an outside wedding that's handled through us, we're going to get paid maybe a month before. But when we have to pay out officiant fees, then that's going to follow a different month. So that's what happened in that case.
I'm wondering about the all supplies, $6,500. Again, it's a small amount, but I think small amounts grow up and add up to larger amounts. So I'm wondering about the all supplies, what they might be, and if our congregation, if they're like 200 number 2 pencils, if they're 5 notebooks, if they're whatever they are, I'm wondering if we might have a separate fundraiser or even a supply raiser that we could do to help offset what looks like ends up being about $13,000 a year. You know, it's the small pieces.
I want to mention off the top that there are a variety of different items included in all supplies. And I think I actually have the report that we gave to the board the other night that has the details. But I know that for the year so far, a little over 4,000 of that 10,000 number in all supplies was the supplies for the kitchen. In other words, the food that's purchased to provide the meals. And that is offset, more than offset at this point in time, by the income from the kitchen of $4,400 during this 8-month period. So that's one of the big items in there, but I think the idea of getting any more ordinary type supplies donated is an excellent proposal.
I would recommend that we could even do not just pencils and notebooks or whatever we need, but we could also do those kitchen supplies also. I really think that when I go to Long's or whoever, and I see that there's a sale, and I know that there are items that are necessary, it's so easy for me with a busy life like everybody else to just pick up those items and do that as a supply raiser.
Thank you.
Excellent idea, I think. Is your hand up? Nope. Okay.
Okay, and please don't use your post to make judgments about me after I speak. I would like to know about the school. Is there any indication that we're going to get information from them so we can complete our financial reports? Yeah, well, I figure you're the...
It's hard for me to see against that light.
I think you're the liaison for the school. RE, the financial reports that we're asking for?
It's absolutely clear to me that we need those financial records. Part of the hiccup has been that the personal information of parents and children. So I have asked Sergio, and Amy was copied on that, that what Kathy has requested is bank statements and bank reconciliations. We need to get all of the financial records we can so that Kathy can do the job that she is called to do and that we need. Because, first of all, let me say this. The school is very prosperous. The church is doing a great job with the children. I say our children. It's not like one of my children's there, but I feel like they're our children. And on Thursday mornings, we have the opportunity to have Keiki Chapel in here. And throughout the week, I get to know these children and their parents. We have a wonderful ministry in the preschool. This is our ministry. It's all of this here is part of our ministry. So it's important to get that. And now that I'm back, I want to follow up more on that so that we can get Kathy everything that she needs.
I know that we have a really good preschool in the whole state, but this is the same report that we had last month or last town hall. And you said maybe it would come in 2 weeks' time, but it's still in the same spot.
Right.
So that's why I'm sort of frustrated.
Sure. We've gotten some reports, although Kathy wants to be able to verify their accuracy. We've gotten a profit and loss statement. We've gotten a balance statement. But Kathy would like more information to be able to clarify things about the P&L and the balance statement. So it's not as if they haven't provided us information. They have, and so I'm thankful for that. Sergio wants us to have that information. He and I have a very good working relationship, so I have no doubt but that this will come about.
I'm glad there is some progress. Actually, it was Ralph who suggested that we use some kind of way to eliminate the personal information, so there wouldn't be the problem of outing
Right.
the personal information of the parents.
We're working on getting all the financial records that we can without the personal information.
Let me just give a brief comment. I did give a more extensive report to the board on the status of those finances with the school. There were some financial statements that were provided a month ago, but they are a year old. They're from September of 2016. There's nothing since then, and there are no reconciled bank statements to support what has been provided. And quite frankly, since I have a background in finance, I know how to review financial statements and identify what's wrong with them. And I was able to identify where the errors were and to write many questions and requests for further information. And I did that a while back, and nothing has been forthcoming. However, we all have our hands full right now, and I am extremely optimistic that next month there will be a positive report.
And we are grateful for you, Kathy. Thank you. Any other questions for the Finance Committee?
Hi, Kathy. Who are the legal employees of the church?
I'm sorry, say the question one more time.
Who are the legal employees of the church?
Okay, we have 7 employees, I believe, including Reverend Tim. We have Judy Sweet and Lisa, and then we also have Amy works part-time, half-time, and also John Ahuna works part-time, and our music director, Alethea, is an employee of the church, and I would say is part-time, although actually in the records it shows her as full-time. And have I missed someone? Johanna is also a part-time employee of the church. So that's it. Those are the employees.
Thank you, Bev. Any other questions for the Finance Committee? Going once, twice. Thank you, Finance Committee. And now I want to open it up to any general questions. We have any general questions from the floor?
Well, I just wanted to thank Jan Fitzgerald and Mary Paulson, she's not here, and Joanne Adams, who were the candidates, but Joanne was elected to the board. But I just want to thank them for going out there and putting themselves out there and making themselves available. Thank you. And the other thing is, it's pretty sad that a lot of our board members and church members are stressed out over some really difficult matters. And even what one other congregant
mentioned was that apparently the church is still, what was the word? I forget the word. Being deceptive, or whatever the word was. Non-transparent. Yeah, deceptive. I don't know how this started, because I just realized this afternoon that the board really does want to work for the highest and best of the church. All of us want the highest and best for the church. And to have it started so many years ago that, the board was not being completely transparent. Sky was not being completely transparent. I don't know who. Everybody was not being completely transparent. I don't know how that got started with previous boards, but so many board members have gone through so much stress over the past several years, decades. I think we all need to, as congregants, maybe we need to sign. They're signing a covenant. We would like them to sign a covenant that they behave a certain way for the church. Maybe the congregants have to do the same for the board members, that we understand that they're working for the highest and best, and that we will try to understand, and whatever decision they come up with, we will support them, even though we disagree. Maybe that's in the agree to disagree that members sign already, but I believe we as congregants need to support our board as well. Something that they haven't been getting. So thank you.
Now she made me cry. But thank you, Diana. Absolutely. It is in the membership agreement, as she said.
I realize I'm just new to the board, but in my opinion, the best way the congregation can support the board is to have discussions amongst yourselves or invite us and give us feedback. It's much easier if we know proactively how the congregation feels than to pass something thinking that we're reflecting what you want, only to find out that's not at all what you want and we get backlash. So I think we need, to me, the question and answer period of this meeting implies that we need a vehicle for discussion, and how and what types those are, I think we still have to work out. But to me, the best way the congregation can support the board is to communicate to board members. And a part of what has caused dissension in the past is that we have cliques that turn into factions that talk amongst each other, but not to each other, and emotions start rising. So the more that we can have general discussion and understand how we all feel, then I think the more we can really take into account the concerns that people have and try to come up with some solutions and some consensus.
And I believe we also have a need for community talks leadership. So that has fallen a little bit to the wayside. So anyone interested in community talks and leading that group, that committee, please see the board.
Hello, it's Bev. I beg your pardon? Kathy, thank you for telling me who the legal employees of the church are. I want to know where Levitt falls. Is he an independent contractor? He's not an employee. He sure works hard and does a lot for our church. He's a volunteer. Thank you, Levitt.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to say that loud and proud and clear that Reverend Levitt and Diana are both volunteers. The board is volunteers. Reverend Tim is volunteering too. On some Saturdays and
I
so
volunteer
forth.
for lots of things.
He might be involuntary volunteering, but so any other questions? Going once, going twice, going thrice, seeing none. I would now like to call for the closing prayer. Thank you all for being here so much. We really appreciate your participation in our town hall meetings. Closing.
All right. All right, let's all stand and join hands, if we may. Here we go. Thank you all for coming and for your investment of time. I don't even like the phrase spend your time because that implies we're losing something. Investing your time, investing in this spiritual community. Take a deep breath. Bless the person on your left, holding them in the light and love of God. Bless the person on your right, knowing wholeness and peace. Surround this entire group in the love and light that is God. We know that this church, which is a divine idea from the mind of God, is flourishing, growing, and expanding in ways that cannot be contained or limited. We are grateful, and together we say, and so it is. Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you.
Everyone get home safely.